Hi, my name is Theolyn, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about George Orwell's Animal Farm. Many of you were probably assigned this in high school or being assigned this in high school or maybe even grade school, I hope. And it's an excellent read. I highly recommend it. If you haven't read it yet, then pick it up. And I hope my review inspires you to enjoy it as much as I do. So anyway, let's begin. You may know him by his pen name, George Orwell, but his real name was Eric Blair. He was a political socialist at that time, and he's also the author of the famous novel 1984. Both of these novels were written way ahead of their time, and the guy was almost like a Nostradamus for a writer. He is amazing. Written in 1946, George Orwell calls Animal Farm a fairy story. But I only think it's a fairy story if you liken it to like a Grimm Brothers novel. And you know how dark those Germans could be back in those days. Those fairy tales weren't happy. So the introduction to the Signet classic that I've got here notes the historical significance of this book. And this was not written in a time of placid peace. This was written during a time of political upheaval. The book hit the shelves when the same month that our A-bomb hit Nagasaki and Hiroshima. This was a timely novel. The Manhattan Project was going on while it was being written. This book is like some kind of weird crystal ball into how politics works with humans. It's amazing. And I want you, when you're listening to this review, to think of it in today's world and how you can apply the things you learn in this to today's politics. And you'll be shocked. You really will. Actually, I was freshly surprised reading it today. And I challenge you to think of the animals as today's man and the men in this book to the political elites. Let that sink in after the review. But without further ado, let's proceed. When Orwell answered why he wrote in general, he penned, "Every line of serious work that I have written since 1936 has been written directly or indirectly against totalitarianism. Animal Farm was the first book in which I tried with full consciousness of what I was doing to fuse political purpose and artistic purpose into one whole." So he's telling you in plain English that this is a political novel, and it is arguably applicable to today. The story starts off in Manor Farm, and a Mr. Farmer Jones is losing money in a lawsuit, and he's taken to drink, and that's not good for a farmer. We're introduced to the animals. You have Farmer Jones as the farmer. You have the animals. We have Old Major, who is the highly regarded boar. He's majestic and he's wise, and he has a really strange dream that he wants to share with the other animals. So he holds a meeting to tell the others what he has prophesized. There are 3 dogs, Bluebell, Jessie, and Pincher. There's pigs, Snowbell, Napoleon, and Squealer. You have various hens, various pigeons, various ducklings, various sheep. You have cart horses. Boxer is the strong one. He can do the work of more than one, maybe even 3 horses. He's the plow horse. And you have Clover, who is the mother mare. You have a white goat named Muriel. In addition, you have Benjamin the donkey, who's the oldest animal on the farm, ornery as hell and cynical, but he's also devoted to Boxer. You have Molly. She's a foolish, prancing, pretty little mare, kind of like a show pony. She's not a pony, but she's a mare. And then you have Moses the tame raven and the nameless cat called the cat. What else? So the animals gather in a barn. And imagine the scene. It's kind of like a dark barn. And Old Major the boar has this dream he wants to relay to all the animals. So they have a meeting in the barn, and he gets up on almost like on a dais, but it's just this haystack bed. And the lantern's over his head, and he tells them all this story. And it almost like puts them in a spell, because they're listening spellbound, because he's old, he's wise, majestic, he thinks he's gonna die, and he wants to pass on this wisdom to them. And like old Major the Boar is telling his story, Orwell proceeds to tell us a story. And if you'll allow me, I'm going to read, and this is going to be the longest segment I'm going to read, and none of the other segments will be long. But please, this is just brilliant writing, fits to the story, and you gotta hear it. This is what old Major told the animals in the barn. Now, comrades, what is the nature of this life of ours? Let us face it. Our lives are miserable, laborious, and short. We are born. We are given just so much food as will keep the breath in our bodies, and those of us who are capable of it are forced to work to the very last atom of our strength. And the very instant that our usefulness has come to an end, we are slaughtered with hideous cruelty. No animal in England knows the meaning of happiness or leisure after he is 1 year old. No animal in England is free. The life of an animal is misery and slavery, and that is the plain truth. But is this simply part of the order of nature? Is it because this land of ours is so poor that it cannot afford a decent life to those who dwell upon it? No, comrades. 1,000 times no. The soil of England is fertile. Its climate is good. It's capable of affording food in abundance to an extraordinarily greater number of animals that now inhabit it. This single farm of ours would support 12 horses, 20 cows, hundreds of sheep, and all of them living in a comfort and a dignity that are now almost beyond our imagining. Why then do we continue in this miserable condition? Because nearly the whole of the produce of our labor is stolen from us by human beings. There, comrades, is the answer to all our problems. It is summed up in a single word: man. Man is the only real enemy we have. Remove man from the scene, and the root cause of hunger and overwork is abolished forever. Man is the only creature that consumes without producing. He does not give milk. He does not lay eggs. He is too weak to pull the plow. He cannot run fast enough to catch rabbits, yet he is lord of all the animals. He sets them to work. He gives them back to them the bare minimum that will prevent them from starving, and the rest he keeps for himself. Our labor tills the soil, our dung fertilizes it, and yet there is not one of us that owns more than his bare skin. You cows that I see before me, how many thousands of gallons of milk have you given during this year? And what has happened to that milk, which should have been breeding up sundry calves? Every drop of it has gone down the throats of our enemies. And you hens, how many eggs have you laid in this last year? And how many of those eggs have ever hatched into chickens? The rest have all gone to the market to bring in money for Farmer Jones and his men. And you, Clover, where are those 4 foals you bore, who should have been the support and pleasure of your old age? Each was sold at a year old, and you will never see one of them again. In return for your 4 confinements and all your labor in the fields, what have you had ever except your bare rations in a stall? And even the miserable lives we lead are not allowed to reach their natural span. For myself, I do not grumble, for I'm one of the lucky ones. I am 12 years old and have had over 400 children. Such is the natural life of a pig, but no animal escapes the cruel knife in the end. You young porkers who are sitting in front of me, every one of you will scream your lives out on the block within the year. To that horror we all must come. Cows, pigs, hens, sheep, everyone. Even the horses and the dogs have no better fate. You, boxer, the very day those great muscles of yours lose their power, Jones will sell you to the knacker, who will cut your throat and boil you down for the foxhounds. As for the dogs, when they grow old and toothless, Jones ties a brick around their neck and drowns them in the nearest pond. Is it not crystal clear then, comrades, that all the evils of this life of ours spring from the tyranny of human beings? Only get rid of man and the produce of our labor would be our own. Almost overnight we could become rich and free. What then must we do? Why work night and day, body and soul, for the overthrow of the human race? That is my message to you, comrades. Rebellion. I do not know when that rebellion will come. It might be a week or 100 years, but I know as surely as I see the straw beneath my feet that sooner or later justice will be done. Fix your eyes on that, comrades, throughout the short remainder of your lives. And above all, pass on this message of mine to those who come after you so that future generations will carry on the struggle until it's victorious. And remember, comrades, your resolution must never falter. No argument must lead you astray. Never listen when they tell you that the man and the animals have a common interest, that the prosperity of the one is the prosperity of the others. It's all lies. Man serves the interests of no creature except himself. And among us animals, let there be perfect unity, perfect comradeship in the struggle. All men are enemies. All animals are comrades. At this moment, there was a tremendous uproar. Okay, so now you see that was the rousing speech. Old Major had had a dream. He passed it on to the animals who had never in their kind of dumb existence considered that life could be something more. So this theory that Major is telling them is more of a socialist theory, and he is kind of saying that man are the elites, and he instructs the animals to rebel, to revolt. He tells them not to adopt the ways of man and that all animals are equal. He sings them a rousing tune as an anthem called The Beasts of England, which raises the roof of the barn. And if you'll allow me, in my crappy singing voice, please allow me to sing you this little tune, because it's supposed to be sung under kind of like Clementine, oh my darling Clementine. So I know this is ridiculous and you can all laugh at me, and that's fine and dandy, but this is the rousing song, kind of like a German anthem. Okay, so the anthem that they all rally around is called Beasts of England, and I'm going to try to sing it to you, and I butchered this, but let's give it a go. Beasts of England, beasts of Ireland, beasts of every land and clime, hearken to my joyful tidings of the golden future time. Soon or late the day is coming, tyrant man shall be overthrown, and the fruitful fields of England shall be trod by beasts alone. Rings shall vanish from our noses, and the harness from our back. Bit and spurs shall rust forever, cruel whips no more shall crack. Riches more than mine can picture, wheat and barley, oats and hay, clover beans and mango wurzels shall be ours upon that day. Bright will shine the fields of England, purer shall its waters be, sweeter yet shall blow its breezes on the day that sets us free. For that day we all must labor, though we die before its break. Cows and horses, geese and turkeys, all must toil for freedom's sake. Beasts of England, beasts of Ireland, beasts of every land and clime, hearken well and spread my tidings of the golden future time. and the barn roof blows off. He raises the barn like some old 50 Cent song in the club, and the animals go absolutely ape crap, and it becomes their anthem. So enthused, the animals sing Beasts of England 5 times in a row. Farmer Jones hears the uproar coming from the barn, doesn't know what it is, thinking a fox has come upon his farm. He takes a 6 shot at the barn, which scatters all the animals, and they go off and go to sleep. And so that's the end of the evening. But only 3 nights after Old Major's dream, Old Major dies, and his words become like a prophecy, brewing in their consciousness. And due to the Old Major's speech, in a mere 3 months, the animals were roused and ready for change. A rebellion in their minds had begun, and they saw it was their duty to prep for it. The teaching and the organizing of the rebellion fell to the pigs because they were always thought to be the smarter of the barnyard animals, especially Snowbell the pig, because he was thought to be quick and innovative. Napoleon the pig was a fierce boar, but he wasn't really much of a talker. And then Squealer, he's a little chunker with a shrill voice, who has the ability to make you think that black is white or white is black. And Orwell is not sneaky or tricky about the naming of his characters here. The symbolism is quite obvious, and he makes it really plain. So, the pigs had reduced all of Old Major's speech, which I only read in part, to a complete system of thought called animalism. They held secret meetings at night to expound on the theory of animalism. But some of the other animals, they questioned the theory of animalism and going against their natural duty to the master, and even wondered, like, hey, if this animalism thing is just naturally going to happen and there's naturally going to be a rebellion, and like, why do we have to be involved? Like, why do we have to be the ones to pop it off? And that's kind of like people today saying, well, you know, what's the use in voting if the system's rigged? So anyway, Molly, the little show horse, the one I like to call the show pony, she was interested. She wanted to know, am I still going to get my sugar lumps, and am I still going to get the pretty little ribbons from my hair? And Snowball the pig has to let her know, Molly, those are creature comforts, and they're just a badge of your slavery, honey. No, you won't get those things in animalism. Moses the tame raven was kind of like the spy and the tale teller, and he called out to the animals that, you know, why should we worry about this? Because when we die, we go to a place called Sugar Candy Mountain. And, you know, at Sugar Candy Mountain, it's Sunday every day, and all your needs are met, and you're sated. And so the pigs then have to turn around and argue against Moses and his wild tales about Sugar Candy Mountain. I mean, and Moses here is clearly representing the concept of religion. And also it's shown again because they mention how Moses goes to the farmer, and the farmer gives him little beer-soaked crusts. So, yeah, Moses represents religion. So, the stolid disciples are the cart horses Boxer, the strong one, and Clover, the motherly one, who accept the pigs' theories and beliefs, and what they do is they pass them on to the other animals in a simplistic manner that the other animals are better at understanding. One Saturday in June, the hay was ripe to be cut, and Farmer Jones goes out and he gets plastered drunk. He goes out on one, and he fails to return until Sunday. And then when he comes home Sunday, he passes out, you know. When you have a farm, you can't do that. I mean, the cows need milking. You need to feed them. You need to groom them. You need to muck out their stalls. You don't do that stuff. So he was negligent, and his farm helpers didn't even like go out there to feed the animals. So one cow starts this whole thing off. She goes and she rams the food shed. She breaks into the food shed, and all the animals help themselves to the food. And when this happens, Mr. Jones comes out of his groggy state. He wakes up to this racket, And he and his men, they go to beat the animals. But previously, these dumb and complacent animals, they fight back. And they kick and they scratch and they butt the men and they chase them off in triumph, leaving Manor Farm to the animals. And that's all it took. So the animals, now with freedom, are marveling that the farm is theirs. And they even take it upon themselves to take a peek into Farmer Jones's house, the farmhouse. And they venture in with awe, and they are just totally amazed at the luxuries they find within. They would have never imagined in their wildest dreams that while they were living off the dregs, that he's in there in cotton, in feather beds, and in great luxury, drinking beer and just carrying on. And there is a Mrs. Jones too. And so later on, when they're all just kind of like in awe and then disgusted with the luxury, they find Molly Horse in Mrs. Jones's bedroom holding up a pretty ribbon and admiring herself in the mirror. So they have to kind of have a little chit chat with Molly that this is not the way it's going to go. In the interceding 3 months between Old Major's story and the rebellion, the pigs had kept themselves busy learning how to read and write from a reading book they'd found on the trash pile, and also by reducing all the Old Major's theories of animalism into 7 commandments, which were then inscribed on a wall. And let me read you the 7 commandments. They're not long. Let me find them. I know you're glad I'm not singing Beasts of England again, right? Okay, so let me read you the 7 commandments. 1, whatever goes on 2 legs is an enemy. 2, whatever goes on 4 legs or has wings is a friend. 3, no animal shall ever wear clothes. 4, no animal shall sleep in a bed. 5, no animal shall drink alcohol. 6, no animal shall kill another animal. And 7, all animals are equal. All the instruments of torture, the whips, the castration tools, everything, the spurs, even Snowball threw away the ribbons that had been used to decorate all of the horses' mane whenever they were going out at a show. So they destroyed everything that reminded them of the farmer and served themselves to a double ration of food. They sung their anthem, Beasts of England, 7 times. And then they all had like the best sleep of their lives. But naturally, some farming has to occur eventually, right? And the cows could not milk themselves, so the pigs took it upon themselves to milk the cows. And the milk is gathered, but then later on it kind of like just goes missing, but nobody really notices it because there's so much drama, there's so much stuff going on. And one of the dogs has a litter of puppies, and then Napoleon the pig decides, since he's smart and he can, teach things, that he'll go ahead and take care of the puppies, so he takes them off to train them. And the pig's contribution to the farm kind of here on out is to supervise all the other animals, and they do a bang up job. When they go to do the harvest, they yield a bigger harvest in quicker time than had ever been done when it was Manor Farm. The entire summer goes by, idyllic, peaceful, beautiful, but Boxer, the hardiest and the strongest horse, he does more work than the rest. It's kind of in his nature to do so, and he's the biggest, strongest animal. But the only real slackers were Molly, the prissy-prancy little horse, and the cat, because cats. They begin to have a Sunday routine. They hoist a flag that they make out of like a tablecloth. They have the General Assembly in the barn. They conclude by singing the Beasts of England anthem, and it's just a great Sunday. They don't work. The pigs set aside the old horse harness room as their headquarters, and they start organizing committees, and like the committees really kind of don't work out, but because the wilder animals, like the little rats and the little squirrels and whatnot, they really kind of can't be tamed per se. However, all in all, they say that all the animals kind of become successful in reading and writing, at least to a very basic ABCDE element. To make things even easier, Snowball the pig reduces the 7 commandments down to 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. Because, all the animals, they don't have the same level of comprehension. And so it's just easier if everybody has the basic level of that. And so the sheep, they love this. And so they bleat out, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, for hours on end. Turns out that the missing milk was being put in with the pig's mash and not being shared equally, and also what's called windfall apples, and I believe those are the apples that are ripe and they fall onto the ground and you don't have to pick them, and they're considered your windfall. And so the apples and the milk aren't being shared equally. They're given to the pigs, and when this is questioned, Squealer, who is kind of like the media pig, he's just like really good, talks fast, double talk, all that good stuff. He's sent to tell the other animals, how apples and milk, they're necessary for the pigs' constitution and because they're like brain workers. And the pigs, if the pigs aren't in charge, then Farmer Jones could come back and, oh my God, they need this stuff. So Squealer instills fear into the animals about, oh my God, Farmer Jones could come back, so we've got to keep the pigs set up straight because they're like kind of supervising and organizing and we need them. So please just let it go. They need this extra stuff, and we do not want Farmer Jones to come back. You don't want Farmer Jones to come back, do you? And so Squealer uses fear to get the animals to give up their equality. Sound familiar yet? Meanwhile, off at a pub, Farmer Jones is bitching to the other farmers about the rebellion at his old farm. He is right chapped about it. And a flight of pigeons had come around all the other farms and told and spread news about the rebellion. And the other farmers, they sat there pretending to commiserate with Farmer Jones about his predicament. But honestly, they were sitting there kind of thinking about how they could use his misfortune to their advantage. Because, that's how people are sometimes. And they're also, though, totally freaked out if what Farmer Jones actually said is true. That the fact that the rebellion could spread to their own farms with their own animals. And so the 2 farmers, Frederick and Pilmington, they spread a rumor to the other farmers that cannibalism and debauchery is going down at Animal Farm. Because that way they're like, hey, animals, you don't want to do this at this farm because you know what, this happened to Farmer Jones, but they're over there eating themselves and they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff, so don't even think of rebellion. But many people really didn't believe it. But with astonishing speed, the anthem Beasts of England, that was spreading. That thing went viral. Farmer Jones attempts to recapture his farm, but the animals band together and attack him. He was gored, he was bitten, he was cat-clawed, he had dung dropped on him, and his men eventually retreated. Boxer the horse, he hurts a stable lad, and they think that the stable lad is actually killed, and Boxer feels bad about it, but it turns out he was just concussed or unconscious. But, Boxer was like, I never intended to kill anybody. But then the pigs were like, listen, the only good human is a dead human. And so the skirmish that they win is called the Battle of the Cowshed. And medals are issued to all those brave heroes. And if you want to learn about more of the Battle of the Cowshed, it is in here. Later on in the story, Clover, the mother mare, spots Molly, little prissy pants Molly, acting strange in the field, and she later confronts Molly because she thinks she saw a human from an adjoining farm stroking her nose, and that's a no-no. So Clover goes and rifles through Molly's little hay pile, where she sleeps, and she finds all the sugar and all these ribbons and stuff, and so Molly just runs off. She runs away, never to be seen again. Bye-bye, Molly. She wanted the luxuries. She wanted creature comforts. A bitter January arrives, and there's a dispute between the pigs Snowball and Napoleon. So think, they've got this little harness room set up for themselves, and they've got they were trying to run committees, and they're kind of organizing things and yada yada. So Snowball's good at speeches, and Napoleon has a lot of support of the animals because he's kind of more militaristic. So actually, they argued about everything, these two pigs, like what to plant, everything. But the arguments they would engage in at like the meetings were commonly interrupted by the sheep going, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. Oh Lord. So Snowball comes up with the idea that if they construct a windmill, and you know what, Snowball? You are friggin' ahead of your damn time. He decides that if they could construct a windmill, that they could supply the farm with free electricity. Hey, yes. And all the animals will have more leisure time. So he finds a book inside the Farmer's Museum now for AC for beginners. In other words, like AC for dummies, right? And he begins making a plan for a windmill, and he spends all his time doing that. And since it's so complicated, then Snowball only has to kind of work 3 days a week because he's in there working on his windmill, and he's like really getting detailed with it. So Napoleon, of course, since he's always going to be the counter to Snowball, argues against the modernity of the windmill and says that it would be better not to waste time building a windmill, but to harvest and live the old-fashioned way. Napoleon would rather them spend all their time arming Animal Farm against any potential invasion than worry about like making their lives a little easier. Or at least that's what he says. But Snowball argues that everyone will eventually rebel anyway, and so there'll be no need for guns. Today, Snowball would be all into free energy, living off the grid. He'd have robots doing all the man's work and stuff. So Snowball and Napoleon, they're arguing, and suddenly this young dog pack comes from out of nowhere. And they're like the little Nazi Hitler youth or something, or like the brown shirts. And they attack Snowball at a meeting. And they run him off the farm. And it turns out that Napoleon, remember when the dog in the beginning had the puppies and Napoleon's like, I'll take care of their teachings? He's like raised himself a little army. And they are totally loyal to Napoleon, and they're becoming quite fearsome. So Napoleon, he cancels the Sunday meetings, he cancels debates, and then he like gets old Major's skull and like has it set up, and then like kind of all the animals have to kind of like file past it, and it's very like Hitler with the blood flag. It's kind of creepy. But anyway, Napoleon, uses fear to keep the animals in line with his little dog pack that's always like running around protecting him and like snarling when they think something's awry. And so this is where it gets really weird. Napoleon flips the script and decides he wants the windmill, and better yet, that the windmill was his idea, even though it's plainly clear Snowball worked on it, like has all the like written documentation and like worked with this screw and that screw and papers and all this stuff. But he's like, oh no, that was tactics. So he has Squealer, the little media pig, go out there and explain to everybody now we're going to do the windmill, and this is the point of view of Napoleon. So he's almost like the press secretary or something. But Squealer goes out there and explains away everybody's questions about why now they're building a windmill. The windmill is a tireless, back-breaking endeavor that's going to take 2 years to complete at best. And now the animals are working like almost as much as their pre-rebellion days. And if they refuse to work on Sundays, then they get their rations halved. So, but they were also excited about the windmill. But poor Boxer, the big cart horse, he works himself down by his continual work on the windmill, and he's always like going in earlier and staying later, and your heart kind of starts bleeding for poor Boxer. But naturally, Animal Farm cannot be totally self-sufficient, so they began to need things in trade. So it's decided to sell hay and wheat in trade for items like horseshoes, because that's made out of iron, because the horses need horseshoes, and things for the windmill that they cannot make on the farm. But by selling things with the humans, they'd be breaking one of the animalism's commandments. What are you going to do? Begrudgingly, the surrounding farmers began to kind of like recognize Animal Farm and calling it by its proper name. Before, they were calling it Manor House still, like it was some kind of jumped up rebellion. But then they start realizing, we're trading with them. We'll call them Animal Farm. The pigs also decide to move into the farmhouse, which was the museum. But when it's questioned, like, what are you doing? Squealer convinces the naysayers that it really isn't breaking the commandments per se. I mean, he splits hairs, he splits hay. He gets people asking questions so confused and turned around. But, knowing something that's totally, like, inaccurate with it, that it's breaking the commandments, Squealer uses gaslighting. He uses doublespeak, and then, that surely none of us want Farmer Jones back. So, the pigs need this. They need to be they're brain workers. They need to get enough sleep, and, they need to be in that house. So, yeah. By January, see, it's one thing in summer. Things can kind of go well in summer on a farm, but you have to kind of plan and save. Just knowing a tiny little bit about a farm from an acquaintance, it's tough. It is so tough. And by January, rationing begins, and the animals are kind of close to starvation. They're subsisting on chaff. I think that's the wheat that's separated, and beets. So they've had 1 year of solid freedom. And on the other side of it, the humans, like the farmers and stuff, and people at the pubs, they're telling lurid tales about how cannibalism and starvation is going on at Animal Farm. Yes, they are hungrier than they normally would be in the summer, but surely those things weren't really going on at Animal Farm. So what Napoleon does is he instructs the sheep to spread contrary news to the humans by, like, kind of going out into the field, and when they see a human going by, just like casually remark to themselves that the rations had been increased. And he also, like, put sand in the food bins and then put the food on the top to make it look like they were just overflowing with all this surplus. And really they were just kind of subsisting on beets and chaff over the winter time. By the end of January, Animal Farm needs grain. So 400 eggs were to be traded. And the hens, they get angry. They're calling it murder. They were kind of promised that they were going to be able to raise these eggs to be hens. And here he is gonna sell off their eggs, and they don't like it. So they go up into the rafters and they lay the eggs, knowing full well when they come in to be collected that the eggs are going to fall and they're going to be crushed, because they're like, you know what, you're not taking our eggs to be sold. So Napoleon calls it a rebellion, and long story short, he has 9 hens killed for it. Yeah. Meanwhile, Snowball lives on like the legendary boogeyman. Anything that goes wrong, natural or unnatural, is totally Snowball's fault. And Squealer reports that Snowball's whereabouts were found, and that he was supposedly at Pinchfield Farm. That's what Squealer said. And he proclaimed that Snowball was going to lead a rebellion or a raid on Animal Farm, and that he always had been operating as a secret agent. So that gets them thinking, because these animals have fought with Snowball in the Battle of the Cowshed. So they're like, well, no, wait. Snowball was brave, he even got injured. So why are you saying now that he was a secret agent? Because they remembered his bravery, and Squealer, his comments don't fit with their existing memories, like what they saw and what they remembered. But Squealer, he is such a fast double speaker. He counters that there are secret documents that they found that Snowball had always been a spy and always been a traitor. And so and he's like, well, if you could read it, you'd know. Anyway, Squealer rewrites history in favor of Napoleon, and now Napoleon's this big grand hero. But Boxer, the plow horse, kind of like disagrees, but he demurs because Squealer kind of just keeps coming up with excuses. And Squealer implies that, there could be still more spies here on Animal Farm. So now if you don't agree with Squealer or Napoleon, you could be a spy. So you get where this is going. Napoleon then begins to rouse the other spies and uses his dogs to do so. 4 scared pigs falsely confess to being in league with Snowball. Mind you, Snowball hasn't even been on the farm since he got chased off. Okay, so it's just totally a false confession. But they're just scared of these nipping, napping vicious dogs, and the dogs tear open their throats. Then 3 hens confess to their part in the Battle of the Eggs. Then a goose confesses to just simply eating more corn than she was supposed to. And on and on and on. Any evil thought or deed that they confess to, they lay at the feet of Snowball, and then they're executed. What? So, the remaining animals are terrified. They're freaking traumatized at all this slaughter. They have seen a mass slaughter at the hands of Napoleon and his dog troop. So, the animals are killing each other finally. And Boxer and the rest of the group go off to kind of like lick their wounds and kind of talk about what's gone on. And Boxer's solution to the slaughter was for himself to work harder, because he always thought, like, if I could just work harder, it'll fix everything. Arbeit macht frei, right? Work makes you free. You just wanna cry sometimes. Sorry, I had a moment there. It does give you a moment. This story does give you a little bit of a moment. So anyway, I'm going to read you Clover's thought to Boxer when he said the answer was to work harder. She said instead, she didn't know why they had come to a time where no one dared to speak his mind, when fierce, growling dogs roamed everywhere, and when you had to watch your comrades torn to pieces after confessing to shocking crimes. There was no thought of rebellion or disobedience in her mind. She knew that, even as the others were. They were far better off than they had been in the days of Jones, and that before all else, it was needful to prevent the return of the human beings. Whatever happened, she would remain faithful, work hard, carry out the orders that were given to her, and accept the leadership of Napoleon. But still, it was not for this that she and the other animals had hoped and toiled. It was not for this that they had built the windmill and faced the bullets of Jones's gun. Such were her thoughts, though she lacked the words to express them. So Squealer then comes by, he's going to do his little spin action, and he says the anthem is now abolished, as the rebellion is over. A few days later, the animals the gruesomeness of the whole act of slaughter has set in, and they start to realize, you've broken a solemn commandment that no animal shall kill another animal. And so they go to the wall where all the commandments are written, and Muriel the goat can still read well, and so they ask her, like, what does that say? And she says, it reads, no animal shall kill another animal, but then something is added, without cause. Pigs! Meanwhile, the dogs are guarding Napoleon's bed. Napoleon set himself up like a king in the old farmhouse. A rooster would, like, when he would go out in procession, a rooster would go before him, cock-a-doodle-doo, like he's a freaking king. And he's got all these little dog troop around him, little brown shirt kind of dogs around him. And he's issued elaborate titles to himself and medals, and a praiseful poem was written about him, Comrade Napoleon, and I'm not even going to bother to read it. That's how disgusted I am with Napoleon. A pile of lumber needed selling, and Frederick and Pilkington, the other farmers kind of rather nearby, they both vie to buy this pile of lumber. And against his own statements, Napoleon sells to Frederick. And in the story, they go on and on about whether to sell to one and the other, and the one's bad, and, getting this big brouhaha between the two farmers. And he turns around after he says he's not, and he sells to Frederick. And then he refuses to take Frederick's check. He thinks he's clever because he gets Frederick to give him banknotes, and then comes to find out that the human Frederick has given him forged banknotes. So Napoleon's answer to that is to issue a death sentence against Farmer Frederick. And when he gets wind of that, he takes 15 men and guns, and they go over and open fire on Animal Farm. Once the men use explosives to blow up the windmill, that is when it is kicked off. A savage battle ensues. 1 cow, 3 sheep, 2 geese are killed on the Animal Farm side. They're all injured on the Animal Farm side, or wounded. On the other side, 3 men were killed by Boxer, the big horse. 2 geese were killed, and even though like Animal Farm wins the battle, Squealer appears from out of nowhere. He hasn't even been in the battle, and he like is like calling it a grand victory. He's like a Goebbels. I mean, it's just like so he's like calling it this grand victory. And wounded Boxer, he's got his split hoof, and he's like, disagreeing. He's like, well, what's so grand about it? But the event is eventually called the Battle of the Windmill. So Napoleon and the rest of the pigs finally locate some of the farmer's old stashed whiskey, and they proceed to have a grand old celebration. They drink it, and Napoleon gets drunk. And so the next day, Napoleon he's like starting to morph totally into Farmer Jones. He and Squealer come out, and he has Squealer announce that, no animal shall drink alcohol. But after his hangover wears off, he plans to sow barley in part of their fields that they could be using for something else. And he adds the words, no animal shall drink alcohol. He adds to excess to the last commandment. So meanwhile, Boxer has just literally almost killed himself trying to build the first windmill. Decides that with a split hoof, he still wants to see the rebuilding of this windmill. He only has a little bit of time before he has a retirement, because that's part of the Animal Farm's new kind of like socialistic concept, is to like let the animals have retirement and not be killed or worked to death. So Boxer was due to retire and receive a pension. But he really was like, he worked the hardest on that windmill, and he wanted to see it rebuilt. So the next winter is really hard, and it's cold, and the rations have to be readjusted. And meanwhile, Napoleon has sired 31 piglets, you gotta love that, who were discouraged from playing with the other animals. Again, you gotta love that. And the pigs were getting fat and drinking beer on the daily. Your new master is the same as the old master, right? Right. And then a tragedy occurs. Boxer collapses at the windmill, and they rally around him, and they try to give him some medicine from the farmer's bathroom and things, but it really kind of doesn't make him immediately well. And so all of a sudden, the loyal goat Benjamin, that's very cynical but older and always hung out with Boxer, comes running into the farmyard and is like, God, everybody come quick, because there's a van, and the van is a slaughter van, and it even has it on the side that it's like for picking up horses for slaughter. So he's saying, oh my God, they're taking away to the glue factory. And then of course the pigs are denying it, and he's yelling, fools, fools. And that the slaughter van is clearly marked, because he can read, and that they're taking off beloved Boxer to the slaughterhouse. And this is really sad, because Boxer is in there, and he peeps out the back of the window, and they're like running after the van that starts taking off. And poor Boxer realizes what they're saying, because he wasn't a great reader, and they're like, get out. And so he starts trying to kick the van to bust out, but the thing is, he's kind of like too weak to do so, and the van speeds off. So it's very clear that poor Boxer's been sent off to the glue factory. And 3 days later, good old Spin Master Squealer, here he comes, and he tries to spin a tale of death at the hospital, and he's like, dabbing his eyes, talking about how brave Boxer was in death at the hospital, all this crap. And then people start challenging him, kind of forcefully saying, but that was a said glue factory on the side. But then Squealer pulls it out of his his little crooked wheel tail of behind, that, oh no, that was the vet, and he bought that van, and he just hadn't changed the signage on the side. But no, he really did go to the hospital. That was just like, that was just a misunderstanding. So then years go by at Animal Farm, and many of the old original group have died and passed on natural lives or unnatural lives. And those who even were there can barely recall the old days. Although Animal Farm was prosperous, the animals themselves were no richer, no less tired, no less overworked, except for the pigs and the dogs. And only Benjamin, the old ornery goat, remembered the details. Then one day, the pigs managed to walk up on their hind legs, so now they're walking on 2 feet and breaking yet another commandment. It just so happened that the sheep had all been gathered in a field a couple days before and kind of rehearsed something, but it was all on the down low and hidden. And so when the pigs come out all brandishing their two-legged status, all walking around, prancing around, the sheep then bleat, 4 legs good, 2 legs better. Really? So then old Napoleon has totally morphed into Farmer Jones. He changes the name back to Manor Farm and invites the humans over to play a game of cards. And the animals come outside and they peep in because they hear, oh my gosh, the humans are here at Animal Farm. And they peep in and they watch the games of cards, of chance and cards unfold. And a mighty ruckus ensues as the humans and the pigs are fighting over who won a round of cards. And the animals, I think they finally realize that they have traded one master for another master. And this is how the novel ends. 12 voices were shouting in anger, and they were all alike. No question now what had happened to the faces of the pigs. The creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again, but it was already impossible to say which was which. And with that, I leave you with the concept of Animal Farm. And are you a sheep? Or are you a farmer? Are you a man? Are you an animal? Do you believe everything that you're told without doing research into it? Will you believe that Animal Farm is as I've described? Or will you use me as a mouthpiece like Squealer? This is a great book. And I really cannot say enough good things about it. I hope you enjoyed this book review. If you do, please push like, subscribe, hit that little bell, and leave a comment below if you have any other thoughts about Animal Farm, how it affected you, how maybe what you remember about it, if you were forced to read it, if you liked it. Also, if you like and subscribe, I'll be more than happy to consider reviewing any book that you would like. Animal Farm will live on in history. Just like 1984, Orwell, I believe, was quite prophetic, and I hope this sticks with you like it sticks with me. And just like old Major told the animals in the barn, I feel like that's kind of like what he passed on to me when I read it again today. So anyway, have a good day. Peace out.